Special thanks to Square Enix for sponsoring this video for Easy Allies. Hey everyone, welcome to the Easy Allies Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Road to Rebirth discussion. We are weeks away. We are in the month of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, so I have assembled the team here because we cannot contain the excitement, the hype for this game. And we're going to spend the next roughly hour kind of going down the path that has led us here to Rebirth and getting some of our thoughts, some of our experiences, and what we're most excited to see coming up in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So I'm Michael Damiani. I'm joined by Daniel Bodler, Michael Huber, and Isla Hank. How are the three of you doing?
Great.
Excellent.
Very cool.
Blood is doing very cool. Trying to do his
cool.
best Cloud Strife impersonation right there.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm ready.
Cool. All right. And I'm glad you're ready because I think the best place to start is kind of at the beginning. I have to know how all of us first got into Final Fantasy VII. What was your starting point for this journey?
My starting point would have been those, like whatever the SIGGRAPH demo or whatever was. Remember those screenshots that was like originally on N64 or whatever, that stuff. Which, you know, turned out to not really be Final Fantasy VII anyways, but it was like a test for, you know, how they're going to do the battle systems in 3D and everything. And then, you know, just the hype train of the 90s was video cassettes. And I got that Final Fantasy VII video cassette in the mail.
Oh my god. You're a real one, dude. Holy crap.
I'm not even sure why I got it. I guess I was on like a mailing list or something from Final Fantasy VI and all of that, you know, 3 at the time. And yeah, so like I watched that video cassette a bunch of times, and then I remember being at somebody's house. I don't remember. Yeah, some guy in a band or whatever. I was over to his place and he had like the PlayStation demo disc.
Some guy in a band. Yeah, that demo disc was, yeah.
I remember seeing the commercials for this game as a kid. That is such a huge memory of mine. Just how insane it looked. Just visually, it was like it was the craziest thing I've ever seen.
Mind-blowing, yeah.
Yeah. And then I didn't have a PlayStation at the time, but my friend did. And he had a demo that had the motorcycle part in it. Whatever demo that was. But I can remember just like playing that over and over and over and over again. And then I would just go to his house every once in a while, play Final Fantasy VII when he got it. But I never got to play it all the way through on my own until like 10 years later.
Oh,
Yeah.
whoa.
Yeah, it took me way later, and then I went through all of it on my own from start to finish, but played a lot of it with him at his house, so I have like really fond memories of that.
Another story I just remembered, I remember it was like Game Fan or something like that, because in high school and stuff, like I really like the only thing I had a subscription to was Nintendo Power.
Yeah.
And I remember there being a Game Fan that had like Final Fantasy VII stuff in it. And so I was like, but like we were just in the store. I couldn't convince my mom to buy the magazine, so I'm just like following her with the shopping cart, like reading through the Game Fan in the store, looking at all the pictures and stuff. But similar to you, like I didn't actually have a PlayStation at the time, so it wasn't until like I got like a hand-me-down PlayStation from somebody when they got a PS2, and then it was like Final Fantasy VII and Chrono Cross, the first things.
Yep,
like buying those right now.
Off to the races.
I didn't see this coming. I played it the day it came out.
Yeah.
I had because I didn't have any Nintendo systems. I had a Genesis and then a PlayStation. So I was always jealous of everyone playing all the stuff on Nintendo, you know, like Zelda or whatever. And I never got that, but I was huge into RPGs, like Suikoden and Wild Arms, that kind of stuff. And so like I remember reading PSM, PlayStation Magazine. I can picture the cover, like I could see it like perfectly in my mind. And like I was so stoked on this game. I was reading about it. I think I put the little sticker on my PlayStation. Like I was going nuts. And so then I remember when I got the game and put it in, and that first cutscene started, it like changed my life.
Insane.
Like it was the most bonkers CG I had ever seen in my entire. And then the game at the time, like now you look back and it's definitely like polygonal, and a style choice, whatever. But like at the time, it blew my little mind. I was like, however old I was, 12 or whatever when this game came out, and like, it was life changing. I think I had friends coming over and like we were watching and playing it together. And
Showpiece.
Like, it was a showpiece. It was like it literally like changed everything.
Yeah.
It like made me realize games could be cinematic, I guess. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Well, one thing I'm wondering is, does anybody like have a specific memory of, that the number change? So like we went from Final Fantasy 3 to 7, and they'd be like, "What?"
I don't.
I was like,
when did I find that out?
Yeah.
That
I
there
was
were
like
other
playing
Final Fantasies.
outside all the time as a kid, and like I didn't track video games except for the ones that I really did, and that was all due to PlayStation Magazine, like PSM. I would just glom on to like Tomb Raider, Silent Hill, 7. Like those were the ones, and like nothing else existed to me.
That's such a good question, Bud, because I had Final Fantasy 1 on NES growing up.
Yeah.
Like, that is a game I played a ton. But then I guess I just went straight to 7 after that with my buddy. Like, I guess I just assumed that a bunch of them had come out already, but I didn't really think about, the chronological order like we do now when there's so much information and care to, series lore and continuity and everything. I just dove in. Yeah.
I was obsessed with Final Fantasy, so it was like, but we just didn't have that much information. So it was just like, Final Fantasy 2, sweet. Final Fantasy 3, like it looks amazing. Can't wait. But it's like, I feel like somewhere in there I had to have learned about the missing pieces that only came out in Japan.
Yeah.
Well, I remember
7, they made the numbers official.
The favorite thing that moms around the world loved to say is like, well, how could it be 7 if it's the Final Fantasy? My mom was always like, what's happening? Like when I got 10 and all that, like X, she was like, X, 10, which is it? And I was like, well, it's 10. She's like, but it's Final Fantasy. Like, yeah, I know. Don't worry about it. It's like, they don't really have anything to do with each other, but they sort of do. Yeah. Damiani, what about you?
So I actually didn't play Final Fantasy VII when it came out, but I was definitely aware of it. I do vaguely remember, Blood, about the numbering thing, though. I will say, I think around 7's marketing, I noticed, especially like in maybe Nintendo Power, they were like pointing out like the differences or something like that. But around that time is when I became aware there was a weird numbering issue. But I didn't get into Final Fantasy VII until after Final Fantasy X came out because I didn't have a PlayStation, and I didn't even have a PlayStation 2. But when I got to college and I had a roommate who had a PlayStation 2, that's when I started going through like the back catalog of like the older Final Fantasies, starting with Final Fantasy VII because I just like seen this game so much, heard so much about it. This is such a big game. It's like I have to play it. I finally have a chance to play it. So it was probably like 2002. That I first played it, so like 5 years after it came out, and even then, still blew me away 5 years later. And one of the more notorious, infamous scenes that I knew was going to happen still got me because it didn't happen when I thought it was going to happen. So very, very, very good surprises in there. And even after playing 10, I still was very captivated by 7, despite it being only a PlayStation 1 game. So kind of like a testament to how that game holds up, which I think is a good segue into our next topic here, is now that we've we've all experienced Final Fantasy VII, I'll kind of like, how do you feel about like the legacy of the original Final Fantasy VII? Like how, in the years since it's come out, obviously it's been like a force to be reckoned with, why do you think that is? And, how have you like seen over the years, have you viewed Final Fantasy VII and its impact on the industry?
Yeah, it's a crazy question because like I have, my own whatever criticisms of the game itself, but the legacy of it is just like undeniable. Like I think it is extremely responsible for the popularity of the PlayStation itself. The PlayStation had been out for a few years. There was still, despite that, there was, a lot of doubts about like whether Sony could compete with Sega and Nintendo and all of that. But like Final Fantasy VII is just like one of those moments that changed all of that. It's like, yeah, nope, Nintendo kind of got it wrong a little bit. PlayStation has got Final Fantasy now, and Final Fantasy is amazing. I think too the characters are just so iconic, and to where it's like you could point to maybe better characterizations in later, Final Fantasies of like characters that have more depth or more nuance or whatever. But it's like, no, man, that's Cloud. Mm-hmm. Like you see Cloud, it's like seeing Mario or something. It's like that's Cloud. That's Sephiroth. That's Aerith, Tifa, like Barrett, like every one of those
Everyone
characters.
Has great silhouettes.
Yeah,
good
exactly.
Design.
Like growing up as just a little kid, I thought the Buster Sword was the coolest looking sword ever.
And you were correct.
So unique. Yeah,
you were correct.
And then Barrett's gun arm was like the coolest thing ever. I was like, this guy has a freaking Gatling gun just for an arm. It's so cool. And then Blood, you're so right with its legacy of just like being this big, huge PlayStation game. But then even after that, like getting Advent Children and the way this franchise has like continued on. So it has the legacy and the staying power because I think it's like always relevant. I mean, we had Crisis Core, we had Advent Children, we had, even Dirge of Cerberus is like, Vincent Valentine is just like super cool.
Oh, hell yeah.
So just that imagery, it's always kind of just around. And I just love those characters.
I remember as a kid, like, because a lot of the RPGs I had played up to that point were fantasy RPGs. Mm-hmm. And Final Fantasy itself had largely, there's some, mechanical, magical stuff in 6 and whatever, but like,
always, even back to the original, yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't have a lot of experience with that. So, like, from my perspective, this was a marriage of sci-fi and fantasy and huge epic RPGs that, like, when I was 12, I had not yet seen or experienced, right? And, like, I think Xenogears and all that kind of stuff was later on. But, like, that part of it, too, kind of just blew my mind because it, like, was taking the things I was used to as old medieval, stuff in a whole different direction, but it didn't lose any of the stuff I loved with that. Like it had the character complexity and like the world building and all of that stuff. And it was just such a cool new direction. Like as a kid, I was almost like, I didn't know this was allowed. Like I didn't know you could do this. Like, yeah, it was just so iconic.
Midgar looks so cool.
Oh my God.
That also is a huge one. Midgar is just so memorable. Just that box art.
Yeah.
Right? Like that one image is just like immortalized in this industry. It's so epic.
Well, and like the fact that it starts in Midgar and it's like this smaller, like grungy industrial nightmare city, but then it does open up as I assume we're about to see in Rebirth, like, and it completely changes
the vibes,
the nature of what the game is in such a bonkers way, like that's such a cool swing to take.
Yeah.
But yeah, another thing with the legacy though is you were talking about this, I love the cutscenes and the CG and the pre-rendered backgrounds and like all of that.
Gorgeous.
Again, like the earlier Final Fantasies and the NES, Super NES RPGs. Like, I had friends in school who said that RPG stands for round pudgy guy. Because graphics were never the thing, right?
Yeah.
You wanted graphics, so you got some like big like Jurassic Park or Shinobi or something.
Like a fighting game.
Right, or like a Street Fighter. Yeah. And it's like, and
they
then
had to be this big to show the world, yeah.
Right. And then now, like, all of a sudden, like Final Fantasy VII, it's like, oh, this is an RPG with like graphics that look really good and these really big character models and the cinemas and all of this stuff and music that is just like, and then the music was always good, but it was like it brought all of that RPG stuff to the mainstream in a way that like they weren't paying attention before because the people that were primarily attracted to graphics were not attracted to RPGs.
Yeah.
Now they're attracted to graphics, and now there's like, oh, game's gonna have a cool story too, and you like just hadn't even.
It was a collision
crossed
of
a lot
everything.
of people's minds. Yeah,
It really felt like a collision of everything that was great about video games coalesced into Final Fantasy VII at the time. Like that's how it felt.
Cannot understate how crazy those commercials were.
Oh man,
just seriously, every time you could not look away from this game. It was like eat your heart out, James Cameron and Avatar. Like Final Fantasy VII at the time was just miles ahead of everything it felt like.
I feel like, you touched on great points there. I mean, Cloud and Sephiroth, like just iconic characters, just dominated. I specifically remember, even though I hadn't played it, like every year, like GameFAQs did like a big character tournament, and always dreading like it was like Cloud and Sephiroth were always going to reach the end and be like Cloud versus Sephiroth for the championship, just because I mean iconic characters. I vaguely remember like one of the things I wanted to accomplish with Final Fantasy VII was making characters that were more popular than some of the past ones. I think it was Final Fantasy IV, because despite 5 and 6, trying harder to make memorable characters, people kept saying they love Final Fantasy IV. So like Final Fantasy VII, we're gonna do it. We're gonna finally make it, and they hit a home run. But for me specifically, like you talk about music, Bloodworth, the bombing run, like that opening sequence on the like this Cloud on the train. It's like, how many times have you seen that imagery? It's just like constantly thrown at you, and it's because it's like so good and so captivating. Exactly.
So sick.
It's so good.
One of the best intros ever.
Oh my god, yeah.
Just such a solid intro. And the music. As someone who wasn't as much into like PlayStation and other stuff, I was more like into Nintendo at the time. I was always jealous of Final Fantasy music. I always thought it was the best in the biz. And when Final Fantasy VII came out, I was just listening to it. I was like, why can't my games have music as good as this? Like, this is so good. And like Genova, the Genova music has always been one of my favorites. I just love that music. And obviously, One Winged Angel is probably one of the most iconic songs ever made. Period.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Step aside Mozart.
Yeah, Kenny Omega has a finishing move called that in wrestling. Let's go.
I mean, that is cultural reach.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah. It's so much so that you talked about Advent Children real quick. Like, as someone who's like very new, like they leaned into that imagery heavily, like with Cloud, with Sephiroth, like that big extended fight, the music, like using like the rock version. I think like the Black Mages like did the covers, like it was like everywhere, and like people like wanted more Final Fantasy VII. I mean, Advent Children, like people just like talking about nonstop. It wasn't even a game; it was a movie, and everyone was like covering it like it was one of the biggest things happening. And it's like that's the power of this like game. It's so huge.
Their rivalry was so huge, Damiani, that they had to continue it in Kingdom Hearts.
That's look at that. They just kept it going. Look at Smash Brothers, Cloud and Sephiroth and Smash Brothers. Like they look no further than that. I mean, you want legacy and power right there. That's it right there.
And going back to One Winged Angel, like one of the first Final Fantasy concerts I went to, like it was amazing because it's like they had like some choir from like a local school or something like that. Plus they had the Black Mages there. Plus they had full orchestra. Like, I don't think you get better than that version of One Winged Angel live.
Man.
Like, it was insane.
Well, and just like the build up to, and I assume we're going to get into all this, but like the reactions, the build up to the potential for a remake, like because of this game's legacy, like I don't think I've ever seen something have that much heat on it, like that much like excitement and be so built up,
Very,
like,
very true.
Mind-blowing stuff.
And it is the direction I wanted to head because along with this legacy, like starting with like Advent Children and all the like the compilation of Final Fantasy VII stuff, people are wondering, about is OG FF7 going to get, a re-release, a remake? And rumors about this started as early as the PS2 era. I remember EGM reporting that the PS1 era games were all going to get PS2 enhanced versions.
Right.
And, we had like some near misfires potentially. We don't, but I have 3 of you assembled here who were, there at Game Trailers E3 2015 coverage for the actual announcement. Relive that for us. Like go. I mean, we've seen that video played over and over again for
Every dream came true, dude.
the dream E3 of dreams. But it's like
every dream came true.
Every dream.
The fate of Shenmue is in your hands now.
I want to hit the very important in between.
Right before that,
Well, the PS3. Remember the PS3 real-time
The demos.
demo
Yeah,
of
the
like
tech demo.
flying out through Midgar and all that?
Yeah.
Yes.
That was where it really
Yes.
it took hold.
If that didn't start the flames burning, it definitely
Yeah.
reignited them.
Yeah.
For the rumors of it.
Yeah, companies and tech demos, like they weren't the only one, but I think that one was, just like a lightning rod for
Yeah.
people to like, believe, and not just believe, but like the demand, seeing people actively saying, when's it coming? When's it coming? It's like, well, this is just to show off the power of the PlayStation 3. It's not like maybe actively in development.
They knew not what they did. Like, did
They
they know
spent-
what they were unleashing?
Yeah.
They spent years denying that this would ever happen because remember too, like there's just a long period of time where it's like, yeah, with the HD era, we have to make games kind of differently. Like we couldn't
Right.
make something that's as complex as Final Fantasy VII or whatever. And it's like, and they just say no. And then
Until now, baby.
PSX, we got. Here it is, and it was
Dude,
like
oh
the
my
re-release.
That's what I
of
wanted to
the
talk
You're
about.
skipping ahead. Was that before?
Yeah, PSX.
Oh yeah,
That
it was
was
like a year
before this.
before.
Okay,
Yes.
right.
Yeah, it was like 2014,
That was
2013,
the
somewhere
fake
in
out.
there.
Tell it.
This is the
PSX
most
thing.
Yeah, this is the most insane
The
moment
vibes, dude.
because everybody wants Final Fantasy VII remake, and I can remember there was like the press conference happening there, and it was like
We were there.
We were there.
Boots on the ground
Boots on
at
the ground.
PSX.
the press conference happening, but there's like a giant curtain kind of like partition.
Because we were getting ready to shoot
Yeah,
something.
so we're getting ready to shoot. We're just on the floor. The conference is going down, but we're working whatever.
Before they opened people into the PSX.
Yeah.
Showcase.
So they announce they're like, yo, Final Fantasy VII. They like say Final Fantasy VII, and like the logo goes on screen. And it is like a theme park opens up. Everyone starts running over there, peeking behind the curtain, like,
Yeah.
it's happening. Everyone's freaking out. And then it's
People
like,
are screing, it's
yeah,
happening.
it's
like,
happening. It's like a stampede. And then it's just like, oh, it's just a re-release. And then everyone's just like, no.
Which, like, is cool. But,
Yeah.
like,
But also,
The
in
hype was
hindsight,
so
it was
high.
so intentional because you know they had greenlit by then.
right. Like, that's the thing I wonder about. Because, like, Keeley does this at Game Awards sometimes where it's like, he'll tease you halfway through with like,
Yeah.
I know that thing you're waiting for, and then it's like a diversion, and it's like, a character from something is in something or whatever, and then he does that because later he knows he has the actual announcement, like he gets out of gamer jail,
Yeah.
But oh man, that PSX. The energy in the room was so bananas because when everyone thought it was that full remake, people were going like the emotions
Yeah.
that were happening.
Totally.
And like you said, we were on the other side of a curtain just
Yeah.
hearing it, so
It
we
was
all
nuts.
ran over to see
People
what
were
it was.
sprinting. Yeah.
And then it was a re-release.
Yeah. It's funny now because like those re-releases now are like prized.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
prized.
yeah.
Because it's like, oh, they're re-releasing that. Awesome. But like, I think the fever for a full-on remake was
Right.
so high that people were just
And
couldn't
it
help
had
but be
been
disappointed.
readily available.
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
had been on PS3 and all of
Yeah,
that. So it's
yeah.
like it
Yeah.
wasn't like it had come out of the vaults.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but like, and I do wonder how much that tech demo played into that expectation because it's like because we had a taste, like we had seen what it could, what it could be.
I think they knew what they were doing. I feel
In
like it was
hindsight,
all
yeah.
part of the long game for this big payoff. Even in the E3 2015 trailers, like the promise like has been made or whatever, promise
Yeah.
has been fulfilled or whatever. It's like
Yeah.
they knew what was up. They knew this was happening and they were just setting it up. And I will say I like the reactions from that. I mean, your guys' reactions, it was what you were describing it, what PSX, how people were, it was just like that, if not more, when it actually happened. Like just watching everyone lose their minds about this. Like people I've been waiting for this for a long time.
Well, that's the thing, Damiani, as I think that like even though in hindsight we see what they did with PSX, I think at the time it actually like it sort of had the opposite effect, and it was like, okay, like people were like, yeah, they're never gonna do it. This is the best we're gonna get. They don't get it. They don't understand what we want.
Which like made it all the sweeter.
Yeah.
When they did it and how they've done it so well so far. Like, I mean, actual tears. Like we were all freaking out. Like that. I didn't appreciate. Like I do think that E3 and those reactions are in some way, and Huber's reactions to that and Shenmue, like, are in some way partially responsible for the existence of Easy Allies.
Right.
And certainly
That's
us
true,
having
yeah.
this conversation right now. But like, and when the team from 16 was in here, like, they were recreating reactions. Our reactions because of that, and I'm just like, I was like humbled. I was like, oh man, like
So awesome.
we're big in Japan, but like that moment, it's a cherished moment for me. It's so good.
Yeah, I think we're talking about just the legacy and the history of it, and it's like there were so few games before Final Fantasy that people grew up with. You know, I mean, you have like Mario and like Castlevania and all these classics, of course, but it's a lot of like franchises. And I know Final Fantasy is a franchise, but like, I think back to, like, I always joke about NES is like the real birth of video games,
Sure.
I know you were like Atari and Commodore and all that.
Suck it, Pong.
But it's like Final Fantasy VII felt like the game for an entire generation of people growing up with video games in a way that, only like Mario and Zelda really had up until that point. And we hadn't really seen a Mario or a Zelda full-scale remake.
Yeah.
So Final Fantasy VII was just in such a unique spot. I mean, because even Resident Evil had their remake, but it's like such a smaller thing in comparison to this grand epic that people have like such an emotional attachment to this story, to these characters.
Yeah.
It feels like this other life you're living.
I would say like 7 remake ranked up there probably. I mean, maybe for like those of us a little bit older, but like on the list of like, holy crap, this like, is this ever gonna happen? If it did, it'd be huge. It's like there was like this and like Half-Life 3 in my mind. It's like
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
unlikely to happen, maybe. But if they did, wow, everyone's gonna lose their mind when it
Legendary.
does. And yeah, so we get this announcement. We have a trailer. It's real. It says remake and in the title. And now the questions begin because we had a CG trailer, and it's like, how is this going to play? Is it, what is this even going to really be? Is it going to be one game? Like, we had all these questions, and we finally got answers with those trailers, and they slowly peeled back the layers, revealing it's going to be multi-part. It's not just going to be 1-to-1, like one game, one remake. It's going to be later they would confirm it'd be a trilogy, but we knew they confirmed it'd be multiple parts. I remember having a lot of questions until it was like E3 2019 for me. So 4 years later, they finally showed off like the big gameplay presentation and had that big demo at E3. And I remember seeing that presentation and feeling very good with what they were doing because it was the essence. It looked new. It felt like it was going to feel new, but at the same time was preserving a lot of like the spirit of Final Fantasy VII and getting hands on for that like bombing run, fighting the Scorpion Sentinel. Like, just all doubts went away at that moment. I was like, I want to go back and play it again. Like, you've made me a believer with just this like one fight.
Yeah.
It was insane.
Damiani, nervous is way too strong of a word, but I remember thinking like, oh, it's not turn-based.
Yeah.
What's going on? Because
Yeah.
I love turn-based RPGs. I love Dragon Quest. I love Final Fantasy. So that change, I was like, oh, it's going to be more like Kingdom Hearts or something. I remember just like thinking about how that was going to play out for like a really long time after we saw that. That was like the main thing. That was the only thing really I was thinking about. It was like, do whatever you want with like story and all of that. But like changing the battle system is such a huge change. Like, what is that going to be like? How is that going to play out?
Yeah, that's definitely. And they also were early on way to confirm that this was only going to take place in Midgar for this game.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of questions
for
about,
remake.
is that even enough? Like, will this,
Right.
they kept saying, no, this is a full like 50, 60 hour RPG experience. And they, we know from all our experience, devs can say whatever they want, but will that actually come to fruition? So a lot of questions remain about, is there really enough content there? And I think
Because Midgar in the OG game is like, I don't remember how long it took exactly, but it's not that long.
Yeah.
It's like the intro basically.
we didn't have any idea what they were planning to do, like changes, revisions, additions, as we would see later, that would you know fill it out.
Revisions.
Yeah, revisions. But yeah, like any other like questions and concerns you had like going into, you know, before the release of Remake, from like the pre-release trailers, anyone else get hands-on with it? You know, did like I did and was able to go, hey, I actually think this combat system works. It feels legit.
Yeah, I just remember there was a period of time when they were like, we had seen a little bit of footage and it was, you know, like it didn't look like it was performing super well. And they were talking about like developers, external teams that had been working on it. And then eventually it was like, all right, no, like they had to like pull it back in-house because something didn't feel like it was going right. But then like you're saying, like by the time we actually got like a real hands-on, like they had wrangled all that up and like it was on track.
Yeah, I remember that now, Blood. Yeah, there was a little bit about that, but I think as we got near to the release with that like kind of like last push, you know, things started to come together. They also did a very good job, I think, with the trailers in terms of we didn't know all the characters were going to look. Like everyone was waiting to see like how Tifa looked. They kept Tifa's, you know, final appearance, you know, kind of under wraps for a while.
They finally showed her and everyone was like, wow.
Yeah, and showing her in combat, it was like, oh, damn. Look at her fighting style. She's like, she's like Monk, like doing all this like melee combat. This is sick. And it looks pretty cool too. Oh, she's got her limit break. Like, oh yeah. They definitely knew how to like kind of like mete out that information just, you know, at the right pace for everybody leading into the release of the game. And that's kind of where I want to go next is we finally, you know, got Remake in 2020. Did it, you know, live up to your expectations? Like, how was your experience playing Final Fantasy VII Remake?
It exceeded them.
Oh, yeah.
Holy crap. Like I was saying earlier, it took me a while to go back and fully play through 7 on my own. I always liked the game a lot, playing at my buddy's house. And I was just not expecting to be that emotionally invested because there's so much hype. You know, it is a remake. So it's like you kind of go in with like expectations of like, okay, I kind of know what to expect here. Like I've been through this story. I know what's going to go down. But just the way that they expanded the characters and the story and the music.
Oh, yeah.
And that battle system and just small moments that would catch me off guard. I always go back to that Crab Warden boss fight or Hell House. Unbelievable moments that just kind of blindsided me through. That like kept happening in that game where I just felt blindsided. Like I went in with expectations and I thought I knew what I was going to get into, and I just kept being surprised.
Well, and for me, like, this is the perfect way to do a remake, like, without getting specific into story stuff, because I do think now is a great time to, like, jump in if you haven't played this yet, because, you know, Rebirth is coming out, there's Intergrade, you know, but, like, the way that they did this remake, you know, it's a reimagining too, and it exists without getting specific. It exists. It's like a love letter to the original. It expands, it changes, it reimagines, it re-examines, and it itself is like aware of our own hype and like love of the original, and it plays around with the idea of Final Fantasy VII within itself in such an interesting way. And like I remember the first time I saw Sephiroth like early in the game, I was like, did that happen? Did that happen already? Like that seems early. Like, you know, like stuff like that where it was just like
playing on your mind.
they're messing with me, you know? And part of what makes me so excited about this trilogy of reimaginings or whatever is that fact that, like, you know, we always say when a remake is announced or a remake is put out, like, it doesn't erase the old one.
Yep.
It doesn't replace the old one. The old one still exists, and now, you know, it's easier to play it because it's been re-released in some ways, and like that helped so much to lead up to this. But it's like, in this more so than most other remakes, that's so important because, like, this is an expansion and a remake, like, because you could start here and you would have an amazing time. Like, you don't need the old information. You don't need that experience of having grown up with it, you know, because like we were saying, we were 10 and 12, whatever. Like this shaped our lives, this
Yeah.
game.
Right.
And like you don't need to have that experience, but this game is going to play with that if you do. And if you don't, what an amazing experience it would be. It's like watching Star Wars in whatever order you watched it in, right? It's like, did you see the original trilogy first or the prequel trilogy first? That's an entirely different experience of that reality, right? And it's like playing this first and then going back to play the OG would be a fascinating experience, I think.
Yeah.
Just to see retroactively. Like,
Well, that was something that I was actually actively doing because it had by the time I played Remake, it had been close to 20 years since I had played the original 7. Like obviously you guys had streamed it and I had seen bits and pieces here and there coming in and out of those streams. But when I played through Remake, I had pulled up somebody else's stream who had gone through it recently. And so I was just like finding those chapter markers, and like when I'd get to a certain point in Remake, then I would catch up on the person's stream to where I was now, so I could see kind of like
That's fun.
compare the differences.
That's so fun.
with
bud.
the old version?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
That's super fun.
But like you were saying, like with some of the character design or creature designs, like the bosses and things like that, it's crazy to see how they took some of those things that you would think, oh yeah, this is never gonna work in a big modern 3D game. It's like, no, they did it.
Hell House.
They took
Hell
that
House.
thing. Yeah.
Favorite thing ever.
So funny, but it's perfect.
Yeah. Seeing all that, and like you guys are saying, I think we were all skeptical on how that battle system was going to work, and I think it did a really good job of making it a little bit more active while still keeping the strengths of a turn-based system.
Yeah.
Totally. Being able to like swap and like slow the combat down has those shades of turn-based in there for sure.
And it feels modern. Like that to me is like the hallmark of a great remake. Is like if it feels both like your memory of the old thing and completely modern and new and fresh, like you've done it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to know. We talked about Hell House. I knew we were gonna get into Hell House. So some of like your favorite parts of this game. So yeah, I would like to know like what was like maybe your favorite like part, scene, mini game, maybe a favorite boss. I know you already mentioned Crab Warden, Huber.
Dude, that moment, man. It's just that it was so. It had no business being that hype. Just like. I'll never forget that moment for some reason, It's like we all have our different experiences, like whatever's going on in your life at any given time can like impact movies and video games so strongly. And for whatever reason, just like going through those tunnels and getting to that boss fight and then learning that it's some like old veteran machine that was like part of some old war and it's been like dumped and forgotten in the tunnels. But it was the first time where, like, to me, the battle system clicked. The music clicked. Like, the battle theme goes in so hard. I can remember just, like, honestly, like, when that fight was going on, I was just, like, ready to, like, throw the controller out of, like, sheer hype. I was so pumped. Yeah. I can remember, like, standing up, like, I was, like, ready to go. I was ready to go, like, sprint down the street. From pure joy, because that fight, when it was over, I set the controller down and I was like, what even just happened? And it's just like some random little boss. Like, I don't know.
I mean, like, obviously I had a lot of favorite parts, like seeing Tifa's bar, Seventh Heaven, is just like, it feels so lived in and cozy and like the HQ vibes of it. I don't know. That's really good.
Totally.
Obviously the date sequence with the dress and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Like obviously that part and the music there. Like I mean I
You're
always
talking about the honeybee.
Yeah.
Oh,
I always
yeah.
loved that part in the OG, but like I think they knocked it out of the park, and the different kind of variations you can do and like the different routes you can take for that part are really good. My favorite thing though is just kind of like, I guess the implications, like the kind of meta textual engagement that it's doing with itself and the original and the audience. Like again, because I don't want to tip anything for newer players or people who haven't gotten there yet, but like the stuff they're doing with Aerith and like the way the game kind of handles the final boss fight is just like so wild, and like what's going on is so cool. Those are two separate thoughts, the Aerith and the boss fight thing. Just the way they're changing things and interacting with things is just so interesting to me, and I think a great way to do a remake, because it's a remake and a sequel. Like, I don't know, it's perfect.
Really love the world building as well. Just those TVs that would have the broadcasts.
Yeah.
I remember always just RPing, like walking up, staring at that, watching all of those. So just, the way they built Midgar and made it feel like you were saying lived in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just like a lot of those, the character moments and expanding on everybody so much, like the stuff that you learn about Jessie and her backstory.
Jessie!
Oh,
Yes.
Full character now.
Good grief, Jessie.
And then same thing, like with the time you get to spend with Aerith, like both at the original church and then where the other place, I forget what it's called, with the flowers and everything. And then and
Her
like
house, right?
what's that?
Isn't
The
that
house.
just her house?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like you were saying, the stuff we don't want to get into too much, but the stuff they played around with Barrett, really that's a moment. It's like,
10 out of 10.
okay.
Yeah.
For
Okay,
sure.
interesting.
And shout out to Hojo. I love a sketch, Orochimaru style bioweapon mad scientist character. So good. Love it.
Yeah, and then the change, when the plate falls and everything there, and
Yeah.
just the insanity of like climbing up and looking down at everything that's happened.
I mean, it's really astonishing how they took, like Damiani was saying when they announced that this was going to be Midgar only, and now I can't picture it another way because they did so much with it, you know, like expanded it so much.
Yeah, well, and even from a design perspective, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
like you understand from a development perspective why you would make these two separate games, because Midgar, it's like it's streets, it's alleyways, it's all of these kind of constrained maps, and now you get outside in the world and it's like, well, yeah, you want to go anywhere, and the world is
Right.
going to just be structured very differently than how you
Yeah.
would structure a city.
Which is like part of what made the original so wild, is like that shift, because I didn't see that coming as a kid. Like,
Yeah.
oh, it's an open world game now? Like, what?
We had
like,
such
there's a map
so
now?
much less information back then.
Oh my god, it was such a cool shift, and now like if we're gonna think of it eventually, as we probably will, as like one big huge game, the trilogy, it'll probably have that same kind of magic, like that same shift between chapters. God, things are gonna get so weird. Things are gonna get so weird.
I was particularly blown away by Wall Market. I was like waiting
Oh, yeah.
to see
Yeah.
how it was, and we already talked about some of the scenes that happened in that area, having like the Honeybee Inn, the whole
Yeah.
Don Corneo stuff. Like that was just beyond the underground Coliseum. I know that's where Hell House is, but
Yeah.
like the whole time, like I remember Hubert talking about it, and like the announcer guys, like hyping
oh
up
my
each
God.
match.
Him freaking out during the Hell House fight is what elevates it to the next level.
Well, it felt so organic too, because
Yeah.
like you would be doing stuff and they would have
And
a line for
it's
it.
on.
Like,
Yeah, I don't even know how they did that.
they
so
just
well.
recorded a bunch of lines.
Yeah.
I imagine
It felt like live commentary.
it felt real. Yeah, it felt like a
really
guy was
good.
reacting to what I was doing. Yeah, it was crazy.
Having like the gym with the mini games in there as well,
yeah.
like
So
having like
fun.
Tifa do all those the stuff. Like character wise, yeah, we had a lot of like great new renditions of characters, but like some new expansions or just straight up new additions. Maybe they weren't in the original version. I remember like having Johnny being added, like this character who was obsessed with like Tifa, like trying to win her affection, and like goes on to play like a vital role later on. You had Leslie, the guy who was like helping you out at Don Corneo's mansion and stuff, like getting their backstory as well. So they like made sure
Shout
that
out to Chadley.
Chadley with the requests, a lot of Chadley requests for sure. But boss battle wise for me, I gotta say like the Airbuster, just because of the music. Holy shit, this music. Just taking a break, taking a knee.
Yeah.
I mean, the theming of the fight was great. It felt, like a great reimagining of the original version. But the music, because it's just this great rendition, and then all of a sudden, like the part when the choir kicks in, I like it. That was there were a lot of pause moments, but that was like a distinct one I remember. Is like because I live streamed this whole thing for my first playthrough, and I paused at that point. This fucking music. Do you hear this? Oh, it's still wasting time. And I was just staring for a while. I'm like, this music. I was like, I'm stopping the fight. I gotta listen to this. This is so good. I mean, and as you said, like all these fights, like obviously Hell House blew me away. Even like the personal battles, like the Reno fight in the church and stuff, like having like the one-on-one duel, and then Rude, and then having them team up.
Better, yeah.
Reno and Rude teaming up against you. It was like they did a really great job with those battles, and they just were very varied and intense, because like I remember, was it Rufus Shinra was like this I was kind of stumped for a little bit, but I always felt like once I figured out like what was the way to how am I gonna get past this attack they're doing, it felt so good. It was a throwback to old school RPGs. Like each boss has a gimmick. It's like, what is the spell? Mechanic. What is the ability? What do I like to do? And like when you figure it out, it's like, felt very satisfying to do that for sure. I think we all agree that like we all thought 7 Remake was pretty well received. We really enjoyed it here, but with that comes with great expectations for going forward. So you already kind of alluded to it a little bit, Isla, about where we're going to go next in Rebirth. So there's questions about, we're going to leave Midgar, we're going to explore the rest of the world. Like, how are they going to handle that? Is it going to be more of the same that we saw in Remake? Or are they going to try and capture that kind of like spirit, that essence of going out on our old school RPG world map and exploring the world? And, did you have I'm assuming you had those concerns as well, right? And like, what did you think they were going to do?
I have the most unreasonable, insanely high expectations for Gold Saucer.
Oh my God. How could you not?
Gold Saucer better be the best gambling playground in the history of this franchise. Like, the stakes are so high.
100 plus hours Gold Saucer by itself. Yeah.
So I have so much faith because of 7 Part 1 that really I'm just expecting like things from the more fun areas of Rebirth, like Gold Saucer, like Chocobos.
Oh my God!
Because
Chocobos now?
No, they're Chocobos.
Yeah.
They keep switching it.
Yeah, I think there's just some accent thing they added to the region of Valistia in 16.
I mean, that was the argument we were always having as kids, where it's like, it's Chocobos, and then some other kid would be like, it's Chocobos. And then someone
I didn't hear
it's
anyone
Chocobo.
say it differently.
Chocobo.
But
I had a friend who was adamant it was Chocobo.
yeah. Wow.
But yeah,
hyped on the mini games. Really, especially because Fort Condor I loved so much.
Oh my God!
An Intergrade,
Intergrade,
Mission,
like that was that was one of my favorite mini games in a really, really long time. So I just want to see that stuff fully fleshed out and expanded. I'm so excited.
I was gonna, So I these are things you would want to see in Rebirth for sure. I guess to clarify the question real quick, before we saw anything about Rebirth, did you think they were going to go in the direction that we've now seen that they're going in from the trailers? Did you think they were going to attempt to do like big, large, open environments to explore? Did you really think they were going to do that, or do you think because the nature of like they have to get multiple games out, they were going to maybe play it a little bit safer, perhaps?
I remember we all kind of assumed that they would kind of have to.
Yeah, they kind of have to, yeah.
And like whether or not it would be full like, hey, here's the world map, go for it, or more segmented off. I still don't know which they're going with, but like it seemed like they would have no real option but to at least let you like walk around the desert and like go a few different directions. That was always kind of my assumption from the beginning.
Yeah.
And then we've sort of seen that that's kind of how they're doing
Pretty
it,
much
if I
is that,
understand.
yeah.
Which makes total sense, because I do think that like the nature of how they're telling this story too, like suddenly flipping full open world map would be pretty wild.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Maybe part 3 will be
Who knows?
everywhere, everything. Go back
Yeah.
to Midgar and stuff.
All right. Well, okay, then I guess let's turn our eyes towards like what you're hoping and expecting to see in Rebirth. Then
What's hard is I don't know where they're gonna end this, and also
Yeah.
my fuzziness of like the original of like where the different segments are, because like disc 3 was basically just like the last boss fight, right? Pretty much.
From what I remember, it's
So-
like things get even weirder, and then there's some boss fights. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, but it's been
So I don't
20
know where
years.
this is gonna stop. So I'm like,
Yeah.
do I expect Cosmo Canyon in this? Do I expect snowboarding in this? Like, how deep into that is that stuff that I remember from a long time ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like you're saying, I think more openness for sure. I think even like we even saw them like swimming across areas in some of the trailers, so that's nice because in 16 like rivers and stuff, it's like nope, just can't go that way.
Yeah.
You got to find a way around. I think too, it's just because like we were saying, they had all these struggles just trying to like figure out the combat system, figure out like how everything's gonna work in remake. Now it's like, okay, we have a foundation
Yeah.
and we can just like blow it out, just do so much stuff, just focus on the content. And yeah, so like I really, like you're saying, like places will just be so fleshed out in all over the place. Just like these things that were just like, okay, just up and down the street. It's like, no, like there's time to like walk in and out of shops and explore and do mini games and all of that
Yeah.
stuff.
Mini games and exploration for me is honestly number one, coming off of, part 1. Because like you were saying, it is a little more constrained, a little more linear. So I just want exploration to be rewarding and meaningful is like my main thing. I want to be encouraged to, okay, the main quest is that way. I'm going to go over this way for the next like 3 hours to just like explore little areas and do side quests.
Really ride
and
those chocobos.
Ride those chocobos. Yeah, I want to get super invested and lost in the exploration.
I'm really excited about the new characters. Like some of my favorite character stuff happens in this chunk of
Red
the game.
13 riding a chocobo.
Oh my god!
There's an
Like,
image.
oh my god! Dude. And Vincent, and I forget how we're saying it now, but we always said Kate Sith as a kid. Kite Shi?
It is gone back and forth.
I'm unclear on it.
I think officially right now it's Kate Sith, but it may
Okay.
change because there's talk, but who knows?
But anyway, they're the greatest. Like, and similar to what I loved about part 1, I'm just really interested to see what's different. Like, where is this gonna go? Mess with my head.
But yeah, the Kate Sith screenshots and everything. You're just like looking at that. And
man.
again, like we were talking about bringing those like creature designs to life, bringing that to life in a modern 3D game is just wild, and I'm very curious to play as that character and
Yeah.
see what it's
Yeah.
like.
oh yeah.
And the fact that we didn't really get to play as Red 13.
Totally.
He was in the party,
Yep,
but you didn't
yep.
control
That's
him. in
right.
Remake, yeah.
Excited
That's
about that.
huge.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
that is gonna be so much. Like putting materia on Red 13 is gonna feel so good.
Yeah, I'm from the trailers they've shown off. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing, spending some time in hopefully Costa del Sol.
Oh, right.
They showed a little bit riding on the Segway there.
Segway.
So I want to know what that's all about.
Swimsuits.
Yeah, what's
The
going
year
on?
of the segues.
Yeah, what's going on
as
with
well.
that?
Dude.
Segues.
Can you pick swimsuits? Oh, I want to buy a. I want to
I-
pick everybody's swimsuits.
I
Does
wouldn't be
Red 13
surprised.
have a swimsuit?
They would be crazy not to.
kids sit in the swimsuits.
It's just how bonkers are they going to go? Because
Would
who
he wear the
knows?
swimsuit on his back legs?
The back.
Or over all the legs?
I'm picturing
Would it be a
just the back leg.
two-piece?
Also, they showed the parade sequences coming back in June
Yeah.
on. So like, are they like? I just remember the original version being like ridiculous, and it's like, are they really gonna try and do that? Like, what's that gonna be about? Like, I cannot wait to see that. And then if they have that plan, like what else? Like, and like to Blood's question, how far are we going into this? Like, where does it end? Because we did see Gold Saucer. It's like, oh, we're at least going to Gold Saucer, I guess. So it's like, where's this train ending on this one? Like, so many questions. And of course, what you alluded to, Isla, like, what changes and revisions are going to be? Will there be things that play out slightly differently here or there? We're not sure. And, that's part of like what I think is great for both, veterans. It keeps us on our toes. It's like, wait, maybe that wasn't exactly how that was in the original one. And for new players, they're not any the wiser, but they're still getting this, like, this great version. And if they ever go back and play the original one, they'll have like the reverse experience. Like, oh, so it went this way in the original version, which is kind of like, great to have that either or situation.
I don't remember the name of it, but Seashell Town too. The town where everyone lives in giant seashells.
Oh, right.
Oh.
Isn't that in 10? No.
No, that's
There's something like that.
Yeah. It's at a very important moment that everybody is wondering what's going to happen in this game.
Well,
Yeah.
what I love about this, like,
It used to be an open spoiler, and now that the remake has happened, everyone shut up.
Yeah.
oh yeah. Well, that's the thing that's got me fascinated about this, and I'm really excited because my memory of the Midgar section was pretty solid, and for whatever reason, probably because I'd played it over a few times as a kid. This is the part of the story that my memory is the foggiest on. Because I remember later stuff when things are going a little haywire for certain people. And I remember Gold Saucer. And other than that, like, this whole part, my memory is pretty foggy. Because it's been since it came out, right? Like, I probably replayed it once maybe in the interim. But, like, I'm so excited because it's all going to be fresh to me.
Yeah.
Like, when he said parade, I was like, oh, right.
Well, I'm curious too about how they're going to do the introduction with Yuffie.
Yeah.
Because we got
Well, you have to
integrate
have
intermission.
played-
And, what's up?
That was so hype, intermission.
Yeah, but it was like, it's just this
It's funny if
total
you do
side
have to
story.
play
It's
it or not,
like a
yeah.
new chapter that really didn't seem to happen, or if it did, and the original was just barely alluded to, and it's like, correct me if I'm wrong, but is it possible to just like completely miss Yuffie in the original game?
Yeah.
Because it's like it's a random encounter, and then you have to recruit her to the party. So I just like, how are these two going to get together?
That is true, right, Damiani?
Yeah, I on my very first playthrough of OG FF7, I did not have Yuffie in the game.
Wow.
I also didn't get another character either. So, and it's they're technically an optional character in the original one. So I would guess they're probably not going to go that way in this one from what they've shown off. But yeah, how is that going to play out? Will it be something like that where maybe she joins depending on if you do something at a certain point? Who knows? Or if it is just like scripted and it just happens. But that's a big question for a lot of people.
Do you get a chapter where you miss her? And then she joins up later. Yeah.
They've done things that track across multiple chapters in remake, so I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe try something like that here. But they can also just be straightforward with it. I'm very curious about how they're going to handle Zack. And what's going on with Zack. Yeah, what do you got,
I didn't know if
Huber?
we were allowed to talk about Zack.
Maybe Zack is,
Zack's huge.
Yeah.
No, I know.
But we have no idea what he's on the key art. It's one of the three figures in the key art. It's like what's going on with Zack and what's going to be going on with that? Yeah.
How they've done everything to get everyone involved or like caught up to speed in this franchise, because you're talking about Zack, and like Crisis Core Reunion was 2022. That just came out. A lot of people didn't have PSPs back in the day, so a lot of people missed that. So just having Crisis Core and Intermission and just seems, and they're re-releasing Advent Children in the movie theater. Like,
So hyped.
yeah.
Oh my god.
They're just like doing everything they can to make sure everyone has access to this whole universe.
Well, and what is it going to be like in this? Because I assume that they're going to make this, standalone so that it, if you haven't played Crisis Core, your Crises Cores or Intermission or whatever, I'm sure that they're going to keep you up to speed. Because, you'll learn about it as the characters who don't know what the hell's going on are learning about it. So it'll totally make sense, I think, still.
Yeah.
It'll be cool.
I did want to throw to Huber for just a little bit here because we've been talking about what we hopes and expectations, but you actually got a chance to get a little bit of hands-on with Rebirth at a recent preview event. Yeah. So you can kind of speak a little bit to what we can realistically expect.
Yeah, the story presentation is as good as you remember, if not better. Like you were saying, Isla, just like getting everybody caught up. Like there's some flashbacks and stuff that like fill you in on important details. So I think they're definitely making it accessible for like if you haven't played all these, if you haven't quite checked off every box in this thing, you can easily follow it. And then, just the open environments. I mean, it felt pretty big just from the grasslands area that I was. It's very early in the game. It was like chapter 2. And, just riding those chocobos through the grasslands.
Chocobos, I think you'll find.
Chocobos, yeah. So, just the environments felt big, but not like dauntingly so, but definitely like, there seems like a lot to explore here. I was definitely under a time crunch in this preview, so I couldn't like fully go off the beaten path and check every
You
nook.
could get obsessed with Queen's Blood, though.
Oh my God, yeah, Queen's Blood.
That's like the mini game?
There's a card game that you can like challenge people to. It's Gwent-esque in a way because you're going for there's like 3 columns and you have to get the high score in 2 out of the, or actually if you have a higher score than your opponent in a column, you get all those points. So it's like,
is it like triple try? Are you like matching numbers and the higher number?
You like put your cards down and it'll like pump up that row, but certain cards will also affect other rows.
Okay.
So it's really, really cool. Certain cards have like a mana cost, and then other cards will like help power up the spots to allow you to play higher power cards. So just seemed really fun.
I'm hyped.
I know. Queen's Blood. I'm ready to get fully addicted to Queen's Blood. I hope, though, Fort Condor, don't forsake me on this Fort Condor minigame as well. Like, they all need to be here.
Yeah.
Like, none of this, this game now is replacing the old. Like, why can't they all be in there?
Golden Saucer should have every minigame that's ever been in Final Fantasy. Like, Triple Triad, get it in there. All of them.
100%.
It actually would be funny if Gold Saucer did have, like, the OG minigames from the original.
Yeah. Oh.
Final Fantasy VII,
Everything.
Yep. But
all of them.
I messed around.
Yeah.
I messed around with dynamic difficulty a little bit, and it made each fight feel intense. Like, even the trash mobs were like, you better get your blocks down. You better get your, your dodges down, your weaknesses. It wasn't, like, insane with the trash mobs, but, like, still, it was like, if I, like, mess around here for a second, I'm going to get
I'm
stomped.
always curious with stuff like that, because, like, I get nervous with level scaling stuff.
Yeah,
But
same.
I'm curious if there's, like, levels dynamic, but, like, with a cap, right? It's like, okay, so like
enemies will always be 2 levels higher than you or something.
Yeah, like I don't want it to like
Yeah.
always be like right along with me, but like saying like in this area, if the default enemy is like level 15, and the dynamic puts them to like within 2 levels of you,
it should be like 2 levels
but
below
up to like level 20.
Totally.
And then they're never gonna get higher than level 20, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. So it's like, okay, when you come back here, you still feel like, now you're powerful enough to slash through these dummies. But, but in normal gameplay, they'll be kind of closer to where you're at, within that range of like, the different players and
if
stuff.
we didn't state it clearly, the dynamic difficulty has like level scaling with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
If,
And
if
it's
it was
new
unclear
to-
what we were talking about.
Yeah, and it's new to Rebirth. They didn't have it in part 1. That's
Yeah.
a brand new thing. So I definitely wanted to check that out, see how it was. Because the, remake part 1 is a challenging game. Like, some boss fights are really intense. So I was definitely curious about that. And yeah, just the jolly vibes of the towns. I love my towns. Real nice.
I do have one more question for you, Huber. Because this was kind of a criticism that came of the more recent Final Fantasy 16, because it went in a more action-oriented direction. And you kind of, did mention to me already. So kind of like, curious to hear you expand upon it a little bit more. Kind of like the RPG systems in play in Rebirth from the preview you got to play, like the different like leveling systems that might be
There's
present.
a lot of
the
things.
whole thing with the bonds.
The
right?
bonds,
Yeah.
dude. There's so much to level up here and get
Social
invested
links,
in.
dude?
Yeah,
Yes.
social links.
Absolutely.
Oh,
The more
Dialogue choices.
dialogue choices?
Yes. Dialogue choices.
The more, there's like a whole skill tree essentially. Like the more time that you spend with
Looks like
different
the
characters,
grid sphere in 10.
Oh my god.
the more you like
Not
unlock
that
abilities
crazy,
and
though.
buffs with those team members.
Yeah. Level up your weapons, level up your characters, level up your bonds.
Girl Squad, dude. See you later, Cloud. Blah,
Yeah.
blah.
There is a lot to sink your teeth into, for sure, just from the little bit of this game that I saw.
And the combat is more similar to Remake
Yep.
than... Okay.
Yep, felt really similar. Still a lot to I hadn't played Remake in a couple years, so I
Yeah.
was like, whoa, okay, I gotta...
Yeah.
When I was jumping back into intermission, I was like, all right, okay, yeah. Right.
But to those bonds, like there are combo attacks now,
Yep.
like Chrono Trigger style, like
You get your combos
team
and
ups.
you level up like your it's like this other thing you level up with your bonds. It looks like a grid sphere, and you can just get like basic stats there or like tag team moves. Yeah.
Nice.
And then of course, I'm just gonna be going around collecting Queen's Blood cards. So.
you have to collect the cards, dude. Oh. I'm so stoked about Queen's Blood.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they definitely tease in their footage lots of other mini games. We got a glimpse of them. So there's
In the trailer, they showed Chocobo racing. Oh, Chocobo, sorry. Oh my god, yeah.
yeah, there's a lot to look forward to. But yeah, I think Hubert kind of like wrap this all up. You kind of put it a little bit, succinctly. All the stuff that Square Enix has done, probably like the last year, to make Final Fantasy VII more accessible. The HD re-release of Crisis Core, original FF7 is like on everything at this point.
Yep.
No matter what
Yeah.
platform you're on, you have like access to that. The remake and its DLC is now like pretty much more widely available on PC and on PlayStation 5. And we have Advent
Kingdom
Children.
Hearts readily available.
Kingdom Hearts readily available. Advent Children getting its first North American theatrical release. 1 week
Yeah.
before the
Yeah.
release of Rebirth.
So
a
hyped,
sub and a dub
dude.
version.
That
each
That theater
day.
is gonna be electric.
I have
it's
my
gonna be
I have my
insanity.
ticket. I am ready to go.
You have a ticket?
I got a ticket. It's like, why
get
are they
tickets?
doing
Yeah.
this? There has to be a reason, right? 1 week
So
before,
hyped.
what's going on here? So yes, it does. Yeah, it does really feel like, whether, you've been following this or you just want to get into the zeitgeist right now, it's like the best time to like just jump in to the world of Final Fantasy VII because of like everything surrounding it. You just, wherever your entry point's going to be, you kind of
Yeah.
can't go wrong at this point. Just get ready
It
for
feels
a
like
deep
such a
dive.
special moment in time right now leading up to this. Like there's been so much hype, so much love. Everyone is just like collectively holding hands, waiting for this game to release.
Yeah.
That is what it feels like.
I'm almost like jealous of someone who's never experienced 7 in any way, because it's like, depending on the kind of person you are, you literally have no wrong choice of how to engage it. Like,
Yeah.
you could start with Remake.
Yeah.
You could go back and start with OG and then play Remake and then Intermission and then Crisis Core and then this. You could just play Remake and then Rebirth. Like, there's no wrong answer. You're going to get a really unique and amazing experience either way.
100%.
Like, I don't know. It's so... I mean, I know this is a sponsored video and that sounded very sales pitchy, but I honestly think that that's like kind of neat. You could choose how to engage with this, and there's no real wrong answer.
Yeah.
It's neat. I'm so curious. I'm so curious about what they're gonna change, dude. Oh
Yeah.
my god.
Well, I think that's going to do it. Any other final thoughts, or just very excited for February 29th, PlayStation
I'm
5,
ready.
Excited.
Final Fantasy 7
Heck yeah.
Rebirth coming soon. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. And until next time, take it easy.
It's upon us, the reunion, when worlds merge. I'm waiting, Cloud.